Akim and Erica Ginsberg-Klemmt pertaining to the WNCA Administrator's denial determination of the WNCA minor work permit application number 2015-102275RW for the proposed construction of a dock at vacant property located on Siesta Key Circle, Sarasota, pursuant to section 54-654 of the County Code. Mr. Berna, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners. For the record, Howard Berna with Sarasota County Environmental Protection. I'm the Manager of Environmental Permitting. I also have with me today County Surveyor Terry Owen and the Zoning Administrator Donna Thompson, should there be any need for discussion in those areas. As was stated, we're here today to consider the owner's appeal of a denied WNCA permit application for a dock on a vacant property on Siesta Key. The location, just to put us into perspective where we're at within the county, we're at the north end of Siesta Key Drive Bridge, Heigl Avenue, down to Midnight Pass Road, and at the bottom of your screen, highlighted in blue, is the site location on Siesta Key Circle. Coming in a little bit closer, you can see the blue area represents the platted lots on the north side of Siesta Key Circle within Roberts Bay. I'll be sharing with you in a few moments some survey information that shows how unique and constrained this site is in the context of WNCA permitting. As I mentioned, those platted lots that are underwater, the site was platted back in 1925. Apologize, the north is to the left here, but I have a blue arrow representing the approximate location on the plat where the proposed dock was to be located. And what you can see is this Siesta Key Circle roadway. One thing that's a little bit unusual on here is that there's no connection showing to what was at the time shown as Fairway, which is Midnight Pass Road on that plat. As part of this review for the WNCA, we were working with a marine contractor, Ram Marine Services, that submitted an application on behalf of the owners. We received this plan with a dock of those dimensions. One thing you'll notice, it didn't pan out very well, so in order to highlight this, I've colorized some of the hand-drawn diagram, and on this you can quickly see where the dock was proposed. The darker blue line here represents a representation of a mean high water line, and this inner area represents a hand-drawn representation of the end of Siesta Key Circle. One thing on this plan that I'll mention again in a few moments with some other exhibits is on this plan next to the dock you can see a property line or riparian line, and it illustrated a dock that would be 25 feet away from that. The denial of this permit was based on a number of different things. It really came down to zoning regulations, requirements for docks on vacant properties, how this site was constrained in relation to the right-of-way and the land development regulation requirements or prohibitions for docks on county right-of-ways without board approval, as well as some of the WNCA technical standards and permit approval criteria. Now, the denial was based on the plans that we received originally. I've had conversations with the owners, and we have an understanding that the issues related to the technical standards and the permit approval criteria could be alleviated by applying the principles of avoidance and minimization, shortening the dock, making sure it met the 25-foot setback, or obtain an affidavit from the affected neighbor. Those types of things could alleviate some of those concerns in this discussion. However, it doesn't resolve the issues related to meeting the zoning requirements for docks on vacant properties, and also poses some challenges in relationship to the right-of-way. I'll take those kind of in turn here, speaking to zoning regulations. There are conditions or provisions in the zoning regulations for docks on vacant parcels. In particular, in this case, Section 5.44D3 indicates that there must be adequate room for 2 parking spaces outside of the right-of-way. That section of the zoning ordinance also ties together with WNCA in 544D8, saying that a structure on a vacant property must meet the criteria of the WNCA. Given the constraints, and I'll show you, it's better seen on an image, the constraints for parking, they did not meet the zoning regulation requirements. This is a partial zoomed-in version of the survey that was also submitted by the applicants. This is a survey that was prepared by Brigham Allen, a local surveying company, and they had also illustrated the dock in relation to the property line. Now, on the prior diagram that I showed you, it illustrated the dock being 25 feet away from, and I've colorized that riparian line here for the property to the south. This, while the dock out here where the mooring areas in yellow would be greater than 25 feet from that green line, the near shore area was less than 25 feet, and that doesn't meet the standards of the WNCA unless an affidavit from the affected neighboring party was obtained. I've colorized this survey just so you can see a few talking points. The Siesta Key Circle right-of-way on this survey is highlighted in the gold color. The mean high water line I've colorized here in blue. And it leaves a very narrow strip of land between the right-of-way and the mean high water line of the bay of area available to use. And as part of this proposal, 2 parking areas were proposed. In going through this review, it was determined that the parking size to meet the zoning standards would be a minimum of 9 foot by 18 feet. These on this diagram are representing a different number of 7 by 20, I believe. The owners did consider an alternative parking at one point, but we didn't find a spot where they would fit within this area. Also, in the course of reviewing this survey and the information provided, we found some discrepancies in the survey information, and I'll share those in just a few moments. But if you take a look at this first red box here, this parking area delineation, I'm going to share a few pictures that will help you get an image of what the ground actually looks like here. This is the end of Siesta Key Circle, and that red box we had staked out in this orange flagging to represent where that originally was proposed. The area is highly vegetated. It's sloped down to the shoreline. Turning around, looking at the other parking area, again, you get an impression it's on a slope of the bank. It's actually located within the WNCA jurisdictional area, and it's vegetated with desirable native coastal species, in this case, a sea grape here in the middle. And the mangroves and wetlands are immediately adjacent to this, to the left. This, again, is just another view of that westernmost parking space as it was shown on that prior diagram. As I mentioned, there was, we discovered during the course of the review of the permit that there appeared to be a discrepancy in the survey. We have on record some contemporary surveys done by other surveyors, Strayer Survey, Robinson Land Surveying, as well as calc sheets that are on record in the county surveyor's office. And so subsequent to denying this permit, we requested assistance from the county surveyor to prepare a survey to illustrate some of these features. And this is an excerpt of this county survey. I have submitted an entire full-scale version of this to the clerk as an exhibit, and this is also attached in your packets. But to help identify a few important points, I've colorized again some of these features. The blue line represents the mean high water line. The gold line represents the Siesta Key Circle right-of-way. And if you can see, the very small area in green, highlighted in green, represents the only available land outside of the right-of-way based on this county survey. And there's some differences between the survey that was prepared by Brigham Allen and the county surveyor. One of the differences was that the area of land on the Brigham Allen survey indicated an upland area of about 1,500 square feet. The county survey was less than 400 square feet of uplands shown here in the shaded green. I did get some assistance, and I apologize, this is a quite busy diagram, but it helps to compare the two surveys. The county survey is represented with the red lines. The Brigham Allen survey is represented by black. And I did highlight a couple things just to point out the lot line setbacks are a concern, because in the prior site plan I showed you, it was less than 25 feet. When you look at the county survey, or the red line, the county survey, the red line here for the property boundary illustrates a dock that's actually beginning on the neighbor's property. So there is a concern about the placement of this proposed dock. There are also concerns about the right-of-way, and I've highlighted again here a little bit darker in red the county's survey representation showing the 50-foot radius cul-de-sac at the end of Siesta Key Circle. And what you can see is that the available uplands are a small patch of land here and a very narrow strip of land here, and that's less than 400 square feet. The maximum width of this area outside of the right-of-way is just over 7 feet, with the requirements of a parking space of 9 foot by 18. There's just no land available outside of the right-of-way to meet that requirement for parking on this vacant parcel. In addition, simply moving this structure over to another area in between, the land development regulations includes in the road design technical manual a prohibition for construction of docks and other structures within the public right-of-way unless it's authorized by the board through an agreement. We determined that going through that process or pathway would not be appropriate in this case because of the conflicts with the requirements for docks on vacant parcels. They would not have enough space to put those 2 parking spaces outside of the right-of-way, and so therefore that added to the denial decision. As I previously mentioned, the permit denial, which is attachment 1 in your packets, can be found, the full write-up of the denial can be found on pages 847 to 887 on your iPads. It referenced several inconsistencies with the WNCA standards and permit approval criteria. And as I mentioned, we are in agreement with the owners that some other design could conceivably be met that would alleviate all of those technical standards and permit approval criteria by applying avoidance and minimization, shortening the dock and making sure it was more than 25 feet away from any property line. However, even if you went through that process of redesigning the dock, it would still be inconsistent with the requirements of the zoning code 5444. So I'm going to conclude my presentation. I know the appellants are prepared to speak, and I'll be happy to take any questions at any point.
Terry Owen, Public Works Real Estate Services. I just wanted to point out on this 1925 plat, you will not see a bearing, curve information, enough distances and information to be able to survey those lots just looking at this plat. This is more like a sales plat that got recorded. George F. Young prepared this plat in 1925. They provided the county survey office with what we call a calc sheet. At that time, you did not have to record a surveyor's affidavit for omission or error. in 1925, and until 1971, when plat law was enacted, that you then had to do that. So the gap in time, you did not have to record a public record, but it was on record at the Office of the County Surveyor. Previous surveyors, all surveys related to this lot on the west side, I have copies of. Surveyors follow the footsteps of the original surveyor in. We all find the same monuments. We agree with them 99% of the time. To change a lot line now, you'll be changing all the lot lines. You could potentially have houses built on the wrong lots if you were to use the Brigham Allen survey. I spoke to Mike Allen as soon as I saw his survey that did not reflect the cul-de-sac at the end of Siesta Key Circle. He was unaware of a calc sheet. He is from Colorado. He's been in Florida for 4 years. It's the first time I've had any talking with this new surveyor in the county. Now that he's aware of our office and that the records that we have, I've spoke to him many times since. But he is in agreement that his survey does need to be revised. If there are any questions?
Questions? Commissioner Carrizullo?
No.
No, okay. Commissioner Robbins?
I just want to make sure I understand, and this isn't regarding the survey, this is the WCIND parking spot requirement versus the parking rule, there's two different issues as I see it, and I guess maybe this might be a little bit of a legal question too. There's a red herring, I think, involved in some of this argument regarding what happened yesterday. I mean, they're close in time, the proximity, but the no parking on the road is different than the requirement for the parking spot in order to have the dock.
Correct. And if you look at the staff's write-up, their decision is based upon the language in the zoning regulations and your WNCA code, which requires you to make sure that the actions that this board takes are consistent with the public interest. Obviously, the board has to follow its own zoning regulations when it makes decisions that would also involve the WNCA code. That's why you have that catch-all provision in your WNCA code. So you have to make sure that, and staff has to make sure that the application complies with not just the WNCA criteria. The WNCA criteria incorporates the public interest, which means any section of the zoning regulations, and there's a specific cross-reference in the zoning regulations Mr. Burner put up, the cross-reference back to the WNCA regulations. But to answer your question, no, the decision yesterday doesn't have anything to do with your decision today.
Okay, so the parking requirement cannot be satisfied by, if we had made a different decision yesterday, that parking requirement wouldn't have been satisfied.
That's correct.
Okay, so the arguments of the sheriff won't, enforce this is just not something really to be considered in this today. It's completely a requirement for the WNCA, and I did say WCIND. I'm sorry about that now. CA requirement. So I just want to make sure that, as we're separating, that we separate the issue and the discussion before we head down that road, especially before public comment, and make sure I am separating it appropriately.
Correct. Your decision is based on the WNCA criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Item number 20 on our agenda, I move to affirm the administrative determination of denial for WNCA minor work permit, application number 2015-10-2275-RW.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Mayo, seconded by Commissioner Robinson, to affirm the staff denial of the appeal. Discussion.
And to direct, I think you should direct that there be an order prepared
Okay.
to memorialize that decision.
And direct an order be prepared.
Understood my second.
Basically, I've heard enough competent legal expert testimony by our staff about this and support their position.
Second.
I listened carefully to and reviewed the documents that were submitted by the petitioner. Using the words unique and constrained to describe this parcel those are gentle words. It's pretty much submerged, most of it. I believe, based upon the petitioner's testimony, they understood what kind of piece of property they were getting when they stepped into this, and therefore they would have understood the rules that are in place for the WNCA. So I believe that this decision is appropriate based upon the evidence presented.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye. Motion carries unanimously.